Hello and a very warm welcome. In this video, we are going to see how to cover current affairs for the UPSC Prelims 2023. If you are a first timer to the prelim examination, this might be a very big question in your mind. And the purpose of this video is to demystify current affairs coverage for the prelims 2023 and put you on the right track of action that allows you to cover current affairs in a manner that is relevant for the examination and in a manner that helps you answer most of the current affairs based question in a very confident and accurate manner. Without much ado, let us directly see what are the things that we are going to cover in this one. First and foremost, we are going to see the importance of current affairs, because here there is some confusion and I would want to bring you out of this confusion before we discuss anything further. So what is the importance of current affairs in the overall scheme of the examination? After that, we are going to come to what are the types of questions which are asked in the prelim examination, especially on current affairs. Again, there is some amount of doubt and I will want to remove that doubt as well, and then we will be coming to more substantive questions. First, what should be the time period of current affairs that you should be looking at? किस time period का current affair हमें अच्छे से करना चाहिए, which will give you all the questions or at least most of the questions that can be asked to you. Then what are the right sources जिनकी coverage तो हमारे पास होनी ही चाहिए. Then what is the best way to do? कैसे पढ़ें, कैसे नोट्स बनाएं भी कि ना बनाएं वगैरह. Then can you get selective? Does current affair give you a space to get selective about it? Or does current affair mean that we have to cover any and everything that comes under current affairs? Of course, any and everything तो हम ऐसे भी नहीं कर पाएंगे, because that way it will become such a vast ocean that it will be well out of our reach. So there is some room of getting selective, but while getting selective, what are the things that you should be considering? I am going to talk about them. Then, should you be making notes? If you have made it, how to use your notes? If you have not made it, what is the second best way to go about it? After that, what is the time that you should be allocating from now until the prelim examination of 2023 for current affairs and related questions? Finally, what is the role that practice and tests are going to play and how to carry out examination eve revision? All of these things we are going to see, and I hope after the end of this video there will be no confusion in your mind how to proceed about current affairs in the most efficient and in the most effective way. By efficient I mean minimum time, minimum energy, and you get the maximum outcome in the examination. And effective, whatever you are doing, it is directly hitting the outcome in the most positive of the ways. Let's start now, and let us first see importance of current affairs. So there is a chart, and what is that I am saying? Do not trust this chart. Why? Because this is the chart you would have seen in so many analyses, various websites, various magazines, various books which come for the prelim PYQ, and all of them, they try to give you some sort of analysis that from this area these many questions were asked, from this area these many questions were asked, and based on this, these are most important areas for you to cover and revise, so on and so forth. But do not trust this one. I'll show you a more reliable one in the next slide. But if you look at this chart, this is the basic breakup of the questions which were asked in the prelim of 2022. This says that history of India and culture gave you 16 questions, geography of India and the world gave you 12 questions, Indian polity and governance gave you 13 questions, economy gave you 17, environmental ecology gave you 17, general science and science and technology gave you 14, And finally, surprisingly, international relation made a comeback last year, and that gave you 11 questions. So, seen that way, there was not a single question from current affairs. So, what are we even talking about? What justifies the very title of this video and what justifies my talk for last 2-3 minutes? How to cover current affairs? If there were no questions on current affairs, what are we even talking about? Look at the next slide and you will know what are we talking about. Well, the same analysis, but on the right column, how many questions were asked which were linked to current affairs. So CA stands for current affairs. And how many such questions were there in the last year? I can go back in past even more, but for the purpose of underlining my point, even 1 year's analysis is good enough. So the questions on history, 16 questions on history, in my opinion may be based on some limited fact, but when I analyzed, I saw that maximum 1 question had some link with whatever had happened in the last 1.5 years. So I am putting this number at 0. Then Indian and world geography, 12 questions, 3 of them were triggered by current affairs. 3 questions were asked which were there in news in the last year and a half. Therefore, those 3 questions could find a place in the examination. But then the number increases the moment you go beyond Indian polity. So for Indian polity, yes, the number was 3. And given the fact that Indian polity pe 13 questions aaye the, so the number of 3 looks a little modest, but nevertheless, whatever is fact is fact. So in polity, out of 13, there were 3 such questions which had a clear correlation with current affairs. Now you come to economy and social development. For all popular reasons, let us call it Indian economy. So there were 17 questions on Indian economy, 17 questions, and what was the justification of 11 questions to be there even in the paper? And that was that these 11 questions were related to topics which found a place in newspaper, and not once but more than once within a year. That accounts for 11 of the questions. Now let us see how many questions were asked on environmental ecology. 17. What about 11 questions out of 17? They were entirely based on current. Barring a few questions which were related to location, even a few location-based questions were based on current. Even a few location-based questions. But then there were some questions which were from core biological aspect of environmental ecology, or some location question which at least I could not correlate to what would have happened in the recent past. Yet 11 out of 17 questions. What about general science, and include science and tech here also? So 14 questions were asked and 12 were somewhere in the news, and majority of these 12 were repeatedly in news. That means even if you are following a single newspaper, then even in that single newspaper, this would have appeared more than once within the horizon of even 1 year. And last year was a very surprising year where a lot of questions were asked on international relations and a couple of questions on international institutions, and all the 11 questions will be traced to what? Will be traced to what would have happened in the last year or year and a half. Now you see, 51 out of 100 questions are current based, current inspired. Now, in an examination where the cutoff is less than 50%, can you really afford to ignore? Can you really afford to believe that current affair does not play an important role? Because a lot of analysis would say that focus on a static part, focus on conventional part, and they will alone make you clear the prelim. I have no contest to that argument that focus on the static part. But within the static part, there is a part that will be dynamic, that will have an interrelationship with something that has happened in the recent past. And these type of topics within the static, they feature very prominently when it comes to the big three. The big three are economy, environmental ecology, and science and technology. So in the big three, 17 plus 17 plus 14 plus 11 questions were asked. So that makes it a total of 59 questions, right? I hope I am getting my calculation correct. Yes, so that makes it 59 questions. And out of 59, how many were triggered by current? If you see, 45 questions. That is the number that you are looking at. You cannot afford to skip the current inspired topic within the static, even if your objective is to do a static part very, very thoroughly. So a static part, when you separate it from its current triggered topic, a static part alone cannot make you clear the prelim. But when you focus on such topics, especially more, which are related to something that would have happened in the last year and a half, then you draw maximum out of your static part effort. I hope the moral of the story is clear. We all are now on the same page that yes, current affairs plays a very, very important role in overall scheme of the prelim. And if we seriously intend to crack the prelim, this is something that we cannot escape. This is something we cannot afford to ignore. Now, let's look at certain questions. This will be important. So there was a question on rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facility. And the question basically asked that these provisions are related to which of the following? Asian Development Bank, International Monetary Fund, United Nations Environment Programme Financial Initiative, and World Bank. And where was it coming from? It was coming from Sri Lanka asking International Monetary Fund for urgent financial assistance. That is where. So you can recall that Sri Lankan crisis was all over the place last year, all over the place. And this is where it gets triggered. What is the way? You may say, no, in Indian economy, I will do international institutions. Really? You really want to say that in each international institution, you are going to read all the mechanisms that they have to help the countries and all the mechanisms that they have got to carry out what they have to carry out, what they are mandated to carry out. You cannot. These are big international bodies. There are so many mechanisms which are in place, and it is well beyond the scope of your civil service preparation to go that deep into World Bank, its structure, its system, its mechanisms, IMF, its structure, mechanism, system. You only are supposed to do something that is basic plus what has been in news. You cannot be encyclopedic about all these international institutions. So you know that this question could have been done well if you have been following the newspaper or anything which is nicely based on newspapers. Okay? 2-3 examples only. Now with reference to Indian economy, okay, consider the following statements. If the inflation is too high, I hope you can see the question. So if inflation is too high, the Reserve Bank of India is likely to buy the government securities. If the rupee is rapidly depreciating, RBI is likely to sell dollars in the market. And next one is, if the interest rates in the US or European Union were to fall, it is likely to induce the RBI to buy dollars. What's the current context? This must we all should know. The current context is that in the beginning of 2022, there was return of high inflation. and return of high inflation in the Western developed world after almost 4 decades. So this was no mean development. This is something that even the economic survey of this year mentions. Then you can see that the Federal Reserves, the American Federal Reserves had risen its rate. Then European Central Bank had risen its rate. Bank of England had risen its rate. And at the same time, in India also, since January of 2022, the inflation level has been beyond the RBI's tolerance limit. If you have been following these things, then obviously this is a question that is very much, we move to the next question. So this question was very much to be expected. And when you are reading on day-to-day basis, or even if you are not reading the newspaper, but if you are diligently following the monthly compilations, you will be aware of these mechanisms. And this is a question which, despite falling squarely within Indian economy, this question is triggered by current. I hope now you can see the picture. We are going to talk about the sources, newspaper versus compilations and all, especially within the context of the 2023 prelim examination. For 2024 aspirants, I am going to make a separate video how to cover current affairs for civil service examination 2024, and I am going to come up with that video also very soon. In the meantime, staying with a couple of more examples, again an Indian economy based question. So this question was asking you about nominal effective exchange rate and real effective exchange rate. What was the trigger? The trigger was a revision. One second. The trigger was a revision in these two effective exchange rates by the RBI in early 2021. So, structural changes in Indian economy and also the shifts in the pattern of India's foreign trade that led to updates to broad indices of nominal and real effective exchange rate. And there were two major changes. Number one, base year got shifted. That was a major development. And also, the existing basket was expanded from 36 to 40. And in doing so, 8 new currencies were added and 4 currencies were removed. So inclusion of 8 new and exclusion of 4 currencies. So this was such a big development to happen that this question again falls squarely as a standard to be expected question. Maybe one more example. This was a direct question. With reference to Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, consider the following statements. So, in 2022 February, the Union Cabinet approved the implementation of Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. And before that, here, in September of 2021, the Prime Minister had launched Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. Now you understand the context. This was one of the direct questions to be asked. One last question, I guess. System of rice intensification of cultivation in which alternate wetting and drying of rice field is practiced. So, yes, this was related to agriculture. But does it mean that you have to be real expert of agriculture to handle those questions? Does the UPSC expect you to read agriculture, study agriculture as deeply as you would study any other part of general studies? Well, no. If you are following your humble newspaper with some diligence, with some regularity, then first thing that you see that after 20 years, the farmers got ready for car paddy cultivation. July of 2021. Around that time, the SRI method requires less input cost, improves paddy yield, right? So this was gaining traction in the newspaper. And even if you have been casually reading this in any one newspaper, this was repeated no less than 4 times within the year. This was a question waiting to happen. If you had taken the 2022 examination and if this question was not within your grip, it is unfortunate, but this was a question, in my opinion, waiting to happen. Now, I think I have given you enough examples to substantiate what I want to tell you. Current affair is indispensable. Doing it is a very, very important pillar of your overall preparation journey for Prelims 2023. There are 2 types. Point number 2. There are 2 types of questions which will be asked to you. The first type of question that is going to be asked to you is direct event based. The direct event based questions are very less. Like Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, that was absolutely a direct question. I did some analysis, and all these analysis I do myself. So these questions, if you look at the last year's question paper, 5 out of 51, we have already established 51. So 5 out of 51 questions were direct factual. Rest of them were what? Rest of them were triggered by current events. So current events and issue based, उन पर आधारित questions, not direct but उन पर आधारित, right? So this is the most common type of question. 46 out of 51 questions were triggered by current affairs but not directly based on the factual dimensions of what has been happening. Okay? So direct current event based, rare, and even rarer for rather obscure event. So the events which are obscure, which does not catch your eyes, which finds a mention somewhere in the footnote, and a lot of newbies, they try to attach a lot of importance to those topics. But unfortunately, that will be effort wasted. If you want the maximum yield, then learn to establish backward linkage between what is happening and what is mentioned in your static syllabus. So when you establish this backward linkage, you are going to handle the bulk of the questions on current affairs. So questions that fit within the realm of static areas, but they are triggered by current. So now you understand what type of questions are asked and what is the relative weightage the questions are getting. So direct fact-based questions, they are not finding much favor from the UPSC. They are there but not in great numbers. The third point, what is the time period of coverage? And I totally get this point that we are recording this video in February of 2023 and the prelim examination is effectively 90 days away, or so to say 13 weeks away from today. So there is not much time available. Therefore, for the next few things, I have actually given you 2 alternate scenarios. What is the best case scenario and what is the second best? Understand, even if you follow the second best, you are going to handle these questions very, very effectively. So do not chase the best idealistic way if you have not already done it. So best case is for those people who have already done it. So it is meant to serve as a reassurance from my side कि ये किया है तो बहुत अच्छा किया है आपने. But it does not mean कि अगर आपने नहीं किया है तो you were terribly left behind and you don't have any chance. No, I really do not mean to say that. And please get this, that even if you adopt the second best, you are still very, very safe. So the best scenario is you start from January of 2022 and you continue your coverage until the last day of April of 2023. Okay, so it expands the horizon to approximately 16 months. Okay, but that is the best case scenario. Couple of questions from last year, then questions which were asked in 2021. So I can clearly correlate that they happened in January and February of the last year. That makes me say that if you start it from January of last year, this is really the best thing. But the good news is that much of the current affairs actually operates in a continuum. There is nothing which happens one-off and it vanishes and it still finds a place in your prelim. No. Prelim questions are mostly around those topics which exist in a continuum. Something happens now, then some more development a week later, some more development 3 weeks later, and those kind of questions they get asked. So even if you are starting from April of 2022 and continue until the end of April 2023, that is 13 months of coverage, that is still good. Because a lot of developments related to the things which happened in January, February and March, lot of things, they would anyway be continuing in the form of one or the other development even in April 2022 and onwards. So you will anyway get an opportunity to connect with those topics. So if you have not already done it from January of 2022, that's okay. Start from April of 2022, but not after that. This is the bare minimum. These 13 months are absolute bare minimum that you have to cover. Can we move next? So what are the sources to be covered? Okay. Again here I have got my best case scenario and I have got my second best. I do not need to tell you if you have already done the best case activity, that is absolutely awesome. But if you have not done it, just do the second best and you will be equally safe. The purpose is not at all to discourage you. Okay. So what is the best case? Self-made or group notes. Nowadays a lot of you prepare for current affairs in group, and within the group one particular person takes the responsibility of following everything about economy, one person takes the responsibility of following everything related to environment, and so on and so forth. And then you create a pool of notes, and this pool of notes is openly accessible to every member of the group. So this is something I call group notes. So if you are a part of such a group, if you have been fortunate to be a part of such a group, that is awesome, because you have got absolutely a comprehensive set of notes and that you can totally rely upon. Or if you have been a solo traveler but you have been reading the newspaper diligently, you have been making your own notes, it doesn't matter how comprehensive your notes were, it doesn't matter if you could do all the important topics or did not do all the important topics, but if you have been making notes with consistency and if you have got 12 notebooks or 12 months compilation created all by yourself, you are lucky, because this discipline that spanned the entire year is now going to pay you very rich dividend. But no matter you have prepared your self notes or group notes, you will need some compilation. So for you who has made one's own notes, you still need compilation as a supplement. It is possible that there are a few events which might have been important and you have missed them. So if that is the case, supplementing it with a compilation will be very helpful, so that you can be very sure that I am not missing out on anything that is important. But what if you have not made notes? No worries. You have 13 weeks and you can still catch up, and you can give a very tough competition to someone who has been making one's own notes. What is the shortcut? Shortcut is you should rely only on compilations now. No guilt, no regret, nothing. The best was if you would have read the newspaper, you would have read PIB and all that. That didn't happen. That's okay. Now you have to depend upon one such compilation. And then this one such compilation you have to do with the greatest amount of diligence. What you should ideally be doing is to make some mind maps out of these compilations. The mind map will help you distill the most important bits of information from the big voluminous compilation. this will be your ready to revise content. If you simply read the compilation and you are not making mind map, it will be very hard to cover it when you are drawing closer to the examination. So making mind map is going to be very, very helpful. Not only that, I would also say that making mind map is very effective to memorize a lot of things at the time of making mind map itself. So even if you are relying on compilations, try to make mind map. If you are not very hard pressed for time, if you have done your static areas reasonably well, then go ahead, make mind maps. There are 13 months of issues that you have to follow, and using these 13 months of issues, at the most it is going to take you 13 multiplied by 5, 65 days to do, and you have many more than 65 days before you touch your prelim. You will have ample time to revise as well. So go ahead, make mind map, and you will thank me later that I told you an effective way that will be committing the things to your memory straight away at the time of making mind map, and later on also you will be simply gliding through your mind map when it comes to revision. So this is something crucially important. It is not always enough what to do. Sometimes you actually need to bring nuance of how to do it most effectively, and that is where mind map comes in. Now, what is the best way to do it? Either you ought to have your mind map or your self notes. If you have been making self notes, no need to make mind map. But if you are now totally on compilations, then please make your mind map. Start with the mind map and then revise and underline within the mind map. So at the time of making your own notes, at the time of making mind map, what happens that you already committed a lot of things to your memory. When you are revising, when you are underlining, then you are actually emphasizing on those areas which are core factual, which have the greatest likelihood of getting forgotten. You are underlining them. And when you are underlining, you are telling your mind, you are telling your brain not to forget. You are telling your brain, this is important. Make sure that you do not forget, right? And then in your next cycle of revision, focus on underlined parts. Because what you did not underline, you already remember it. Therefore, you did not underline. You underlined those things where you feared forgetting. So, focus on underlined parts and then go ahead and take tests. Like I told you in the prelim preparation video, that taking test serves augmentation, identification of weak areas. At the same time, it is the most effective tool of revision. So go ahead and take tests. They will be helping you consolidate your grasp over current affairs unlike anything else. Now, the question is, can I be selective? My answer is yes, but get selective selectively. Do not become selective in a wholesale mode. When you are getting selective, be a little cautious, be a little conservative. Do not cut away, do not chip away so many topics that it eventually compromises your safety in the examination. Ultimately, why we are even preparing? We are preparing to maximize our score and bring our score to a level which is comfortably above the cutoff. So I always say that you should be preparing for at least that score where after writing the prelim, you are not really needing to check your answers from XYZ solution. You are knowing somewhere deep within your mind that I am going to clear the prelim. No matter what is my score from this solution, what is my score from that solution, I am going to clear the prelim. So you have to prepare for that level. When you are preparing for that level, always try to do a little more than that is expected from you at a bare minimum level. Do not bring it to bare minimum level because that is a very risky place to be. If you bring it to bare minimum level and if it is not your day on the date of prelim, that is 28th May, you will find more wrong answers accumulating and that may impact your chances of clearing. So try to get a little less selective, not very aggressively selective. Hence I said get selective selectively, do not get selective aggressively. Now, you really need to know what does not get asked or what gets rarely asked. So there are things which are not going to be asked. Like if you are talking about economy. So in economy, questions related to exact figure hardly gets asked. Why? Because you are not going to remember the exact number. Similarly, in environmental ecology, questions related to deep dimensions of biology are not going to be asked. In science and technology, a little bit of technological awareness is needed, but taking it to the level of the specialist is absolutely not needed. Even if the Hindu newspaper or the Indian Express newspaper decided to cover it in half a page, it does not make it important for the UPSC. So you really need to know where the boundaries of general studies, current affairs are drawn, and you don't have to cross that. So do not get into the very specialized realm of science and technology, environmental ecology, so on. So you should know. And even if there is a rare question which really digs deep into the technicalities of science and tech and environment, understand that one rare question does not make it a rule, because human mind works like Teflon to good things and Velcro to bad things. So one question that you could not solve has a potential to put your preparation in entirely a different direction. That okay, I could not solve because it was asked from deep of, let's say, AI or let's say blockchain or something, and then you start reading a lot. Little do you realize that this deep question is not a pattern, this is an aberration. So my third point is, one odd question does not make a trend. Moving next, you should be covering all the major issues. Anything which is in the continuity, anything which impacts economy of India, well-being of the people of India, the environment of India, India's external relations, India's Indian polity, Indian legal system, anything that has a potential to impact or any issue that is seriously related to it, please do it nicely, because the UPSC specializes in asking non-obvious dimensions of some of the most obvious questions. So topics can be very obvious, but the question that may be asked may be very, very non-obvious. So you have to prepare in that mode. So I said definitely cover the major issues and initiatives in detail. So the thing is in detail and major issues. And you should finally be relying on just two sources, notes or mind map and the tests. In my earlier video, I have already told you about the augmentative value of the test. That when you are solving a test paper and you are getting certain questions wrong, rather than feeling bad about your preparedness, you should feel happy that before going to the examination, you really recognized where you were weak. And not only you were able to recognize, the answers and explanation provided by the test series is giving you a ready-made material to fill those gaps also. So if you are relying upon your notes, whether they have been made from newspaper plus little bit of supplementation from the compilation or only from the compilation in the form of mind map, so that plus the tests in their augmentative value, they are going to serve all the purposes of your good performance in the questions related to current affairs. Question is, should you be making notes? I have already made my stance very, very clear. My answer is yes, please do make notes until you are very badly pressed for time. If you are very badly pressed for time, you are excused, okay? But, and when you will be very badly pressed for time, if your static areas are not yet covered nicely, and if you are really serious that still I want to make the best out of my 2023 attempt, then by all means you should be focusing upon the static areas. Then do not waste time making notes of current affairs. Okay, so I hope I am making very clear, and if there is any doubt, please put your doubts in the comment section and I will be answering those questions myself. So why making notes helps? First, there is something called hand-mind connection, something that you write with your own hands, and that is where handwritten notes, they are notch above your digital notes. Digital notes give you unprecedented flexibility, but handwritten notes, they commit the things to your memory. They are amazingly fast to revise at a later point because part of it is already existing residually in your memory. Second, when you are writing with your hands, you are not going to copy anything verbatim. You are going to keep it to a very concise level. So a concise material is faster to revise. And finally, when you are writing something, you are also going to focus on what is essential to be brought in your notebook. So as such, this is a greatly filtered content which makes your focus on essentials, and that is what will serve you in the examination. So making notes is going to be amazingly helpful. And do not panic if you have not done. Coverage from two sources should then be your priority. अगर नहीं बनाया है notes, and if you are really in a tight spot vis-a-vis the static areas, then I would say forget making notes and let us now directly study from the compilations and without bothering to make the notes. Okay, but that exemption is available to you only if you are very tightly placed. If not, please make notes. Okay, so in that case, the other cases, then simply highlight, underline within the compilations and then read it, reread it, again do it, and then go for attempting the test and use the tests for their augmentative value as well as the revision value. Now, how much time you should be allocating? I would say from now until the prelim, minimum 2 hours a day, because mind it, it is going to account for nearly 50%. So anything less than 2 hours is also an insult to this important area. No matter how well prepared you are, minimum 2 hours. If you can take 3 hours, that is perfectly fine. I really do not think you will need more than 3 hours. Okay. So when you are doing 2 hours, it should be divided into 100 plus 20 minutes. So what you should be doing, that 100 minutes you should be allocating to studying and making notes, and it can be notes or it can be mind map, either thing, and 20 minutes must go to your revision. Remember, we are so close to the prelim examination now that we are not going to wait until the coverage to be completed before we start revising. Revision is now a parallel activity. So there has to be 8 weeks for coverage and consolidation, and with that coverage and consolidation, you have to carry out parallel revision. And mind it, when I am recording this video, there are 13 weeks available to you from this point until the prelim. So 8 weeks can go for coverage and consolidation, and coverage and consolidation at the cost of repeating myself has to be accompanied by parallel revision. And last 5 weeks only for revision and occasional augmentation. Augmentation will be happening from the tests. We have already spoken about it and I cannot overemphasize this. Tests are going to play a very big role. So now you are clear how much time that you have to allocate. Now, role of tests and practice. So tests are going to be indispensable, absolutely indispensable for your overall journey for the current affairs and for that matter overall prelim examination preparedness? Because tests serve three purposes. The first purpose is augmentation. Tests augment your knowledge, and where they augment is most important because they augment your knowledge where there are gaps. That is why you got those questions wrong. And if you got your questions wrong, now the test is going to fill that gap. So wonderful opportunity to fill your gaps in the most exam aligned manner. Second, tests help you assess, gain confidence, and know how you are progressing. Third, tests basically force you to recall the information, recall the concept, sometimes take guesses also, and then solve a question. So when you apply your knowledge to solve a problem, you are never going to forget it. And that is exactly why you should be putting your knowledge to test, because the test enable you to draw your knowledge and put it to use, put it to solve a problem. And once you have solved the problem, correctly or maybe wrongly, once you are trying to solve the problem, that bit of knowledge that you brought out from your memory, that bit you are not going to forget. So in your overall scheme of things, tests are extremely important, cannot be ignored. That brings me to the last point, how to carry out examination eve revision. So with respect to current affairs, because this video is about how to cover current affairs for prelims 2023, go through your mind maps or self notes 2 times in the last 5 weeks. 8 weeks you have spent on coverage, and whatever you have done in these 8 weeks, in the last 5 weeks, twice you have to go through that. Ideally speaking, one cycle of revision should be done in 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks, another cycle of revision, and in the last week, try to quickly run everything in front of your eyes. So there will be a lot of visual recall, and mind it, the beauty of the prelim examination is that oftentimes it may also be a test of not recall, test of recognition. A word that you would have read, you are unable to recall it fully. But when you see the word or similar word in the question paper, you will be able to hit the right answer. So sometimes you will be solving the question by recall, sometimes you will be solving it by recognition. So this is going to be a very important exercise. If you can revise it, 2 weeks one cycle, 2 weeks another cycle, and last 1 week run everything in front of your eyes, no matter how rapidly you run it. This will help you. Go through all the tests that you have solved so far. All the tests on current that you have solved, go through all of those tests. Even the questions that you marked correctly, do not take them for granted that now you have retained it forever. No. You run through those tests also. Even if you got it correct, revise those tests, you will be surprised how many things you were forgetting. But this revision consolidates what you already knew. So please do that. And in the last 5 weeks, make sure that you are solving 500 new questions. It is possible that out of those 500, now you will be still getting 350 correct and 150 wrong. No problem. That those 150 wrong answers are basically your augmentation opportunity, last moment augmentation opportunity. Do these 10 things, and you will see that through various milestones, ultimately you will reach where you want to reach. The purpose of this series is to help you clear the first hurdle of the civil service selection process in 2023. Because you cannot deny the fact that 98% of civil service dreams get shattered at the threshold of the prelim examination. Let that not happen to you, and for that, from now until the prelim, you really need to get your act together. This video is an exercise to contribute whatever small I can do in that journey to the prelim examination. I hope you are finding this series helpful and you found this talk meaningful and adding some direction to where you have been going. I wish you all the best for your efforts, and I wish you success in this year's examination itself. Goodbye and good luck to all of you.